I am so excited to be here with my friend Nora Herold. I had the opportunity to meet Nora way back in 2015. We were both members of the channel panel in Los Angeles. And I honestly can't believe that much time has gone by. I am so happy to be connecting with her in this way today. She's such an interesting character. I love her authenticity and the information that she shares. So she's kind of like the whole package. So please join me in welcoming Nora Herold. Hi, Nora.
Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much for having me on. And I want to say hi to everyone tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in and being present here.
I just love your energy. So for people who may not know you, can you explain what it is that you do?
Yes, that's so interesting. When you asked the question, you notice I paused because I try to answer questions in the moment as opposed to like a preloaded recording of what I do. So, and I've gone through some pretty radical changes over the last couple of years, which is why I'm pausing for a moment. I am a direct voice channel. I predominantly bring through the Pleiadians, the fairies, Yeshua, and then an assortment of other beings as well. That can include those who have passed. That typically only happens in one-on-one sessions, but I don't define myself as a classic medium in that respect. Those are just kind of sporadic instances when I'm working with clients where a need is expressed, and then that energy will manifest. I am also a Reiki master. I am a writer. Just within the last year, I have healed something that had been causing almost 3 decades worth of writer's block, launched a Substack spontaneously, and have been writing at a level that I have always dreamed about. And I believe that will continue and increase. I am a political activist, very progressive, worked on 2 presidential campaigns, and I'm of the belief that our politics are an expression of our spiritual beliefs and values, that there's not a separation between the two. I'm of the belief that everything we do, right, is a representation of our spiritual beliefs and values, everything. Yes,
Mhm.
so that is me. Work, that's work me, I guess, in a nutshell, right?
It's
That's work me.
a lot. It's a lot. I find it interesting that you talked about how who you are has kind of changed because I remember reaching out to you last year. And so many of us that have been working in, the spiritual realm with our service offerings had found that there wasn't a lot of monetary support. We weren't sure what was going on. And I remember you saying to me, I don't even know where I fit in anymore. And
Yeah.
it just summed it up so beautifully for me because it didn't feel like it did before, where I had very clear idea of what I was doing. And now new things like your writing have been showing up for me. So it's almost like we were at the end of an energy road maybe and hadn't quite connected to the new. So I love that perspective that it kind of changes day by day, doesn't it,
Yes.
in these new energies, and we have to be willing to trust and move with it. So what a great way of putting it.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, terrifying and death-defying, right? Like I feel like I'm white knuckling my way through so much of this all of the time.
Yeah.
And I have found the answer to that question, that where do I fit in? What works for me, what's always worked for me, and I probably just wasn't remembering it when you and I had that conversation, was when I settle into my truth that I desire to be of service and desire to be an uplifter. Right? And I think those are the two terms that really work for me. Everything then falls into place, the way to do it, how to show up, where to show up, what kind of work to be doing, right? Those things then make themselves clear. But if I'm attached to, oh, I have to be this kind of channel talking about this kind of information, I find that really narrows the opportunities to connect with others and be of service, because what everyone needs changes in the moment and has been changing in the moment so rapidly and really radically over the last few years. What people needed from me in 2019 is very different from what they need from me today. And my work, I think, is to show up to the moment at hand. And that's where channeling is wonderful, right?
Yes. I had an awareness today kind of plunk in when I was working with a client that we're becoming multidimensional in our multidimensionality. And I understand that. I mean, it sounds like a weird thing, but we had worked multidimensionally before, but now it's almost expanding into these new arenas. And I know you've been doing this work for a very long time. I'm coming up on 20 years, the end of March. And to have it suddenly change now is shocking to me because I thought I knew what it looked like.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we're all going through the big changes just in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be 26 years for me in May.
Wow.
Yep, that I
My
launched
hat's off.
that I launched my career as $1 a minute psychic. That was my
Wow.
origins in the metaphysical bookshops in and around Chicago. I was a dollar
Isn't
a minute tarot
that?
card reader, psychic channel. Yeah.
Wow. So before you started doing that work, did you always have an interest in metaphysics, or was it something that suddenly bloomed in you?
No, I always had an interest, right? When I was a kid, I remember my dad was always really interested in UFOs and Bigfoot and right. I don't know if you remember the show In Search of. It was a
Oh,
show that was called In Search of, and every week they would delve into a specific metaphysical or paranormal topic. Amelia Earhart was one of the episodes, right? What happened to her? The Bermuda Triangle. Now, my dad and I would watch that show together. I was probably 8, 9, 10, 11 when we were doing that. And I remember at about the age of 8 as well. Like 8 was a big year for me. I would lie in bed at night and start to feel like I was about to grasp an understanding of who God was. I was Catholic. I was raised Catholic at the time. So my understanding of spirituality was all run through Catholicism. I didn't have an expanded viewpoint at that time, but I could feel it, right? Like there was this answer and it was right there, and then it would slip away. And I'd feel frustration and fall asleep. And I remember telling my mom about it the next morning, some morning, and she said, "Oh, keep trying." Like that was her advice, was to keep at it. So I think now, as I look back, what I understand is I was starting to access what I would define my higher self as my higher self, or my fifth dimensional consciousness, that access to all of my records and an expanded understanding and awareness. So yes, I was young when I started it, but then, life really intruded in my teenage years. And instead of going farther on my spiritual path, I had to go farther into survival mode and shut it all down. And then when I was in my early 20s, I got my first deck of tarot cards as a way to start to open up again to all of that exploration I was doing when I was very young. And since then, I'm 57 now. So it's been just kind of a nonstop evolution from tarot to crystals to starting to feel energy to a November night in 1996 when I was hanging out with a friend of mine. And she started to talk about this new friend she had who channeled her spirit guides. And in that moment, when she said it, like just a light went on, like that's the thing I've been looking for, and consciously met my primary guide that night in my friend Amy's apartment.
Wow. I know when you first started channeling, I think you were more of a trance channel. Is
Never trans channel. No, always I would say semi conscious,
right. Yeah, so
but
you
never
had an
trans. I
awareness.
never completely left.
But now you do it with your eyes open very consciously.
Yes, that's the change. Yes, it's fun. And that happened because I saw another channel do it.
Oh,
A lot of my evolution has come from observing the world around me and the way that other people work, from how do you schedule clients, right? To how you channel. And I remember watching a channel and watching him channel with his eyes open. So he personally could connect more directly with the audience while channeling. And I thought, oh, I want to start trying that. So, yes, that was that shift that, yes. So I think that's when I went from like semi-conscious, kind of Nora needing to get out of the way a bit more, to bringing myself more fully present. Now, there are still times when I'll close my eyes if I am bringing through something that feels very, very new to me, where I need to just kind of step back a little more to allow it through. Yes.
I'm right on the precipice of doing it, like more and more work is coming through just with my eyes open. But that's another leap of faith, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And what you can do is you can do what I just said. You can open your eyes and do it. And then if you feel like you have to close your eyes, then close your eyes, right? And right. If
Yeah.
somebody's grading me, well, that's fine. They can grade me. I'm not grading myself.
Right. Um, what's it like for you when you channel? How does it feel when you
Mm,
channel?
it's funny. The first thing that happens is I get very hot. So, for instance, when I'm done with like an hour-long channeling session, I will leave my room and my room will be 10 degrees warmer than the rest of the house because of just the energy moving through, and then my physical response is to heat up. And it's gotten more extreme during menopause, right?
It's what you want.
Yes. However, like emotionally, energetically, it's I feel peaceful, I feel relaxed, I also feel energized, right? It's this funny combination of peaceful and energized. When the fairies come through, that tends to amp my own personal joy, right? And when those who have passed come through, I often will cry.
Mhm.
And it's not a manifestation, those tears of grief or sadness. It's because there's so much love being pushed through me, yeah, to the person I'm channeling for, that my body just needs to release some extra tears. And that happened the first time I channeled. The very first time I connected with my guide, I found that same experience happening of just feeling overwhelmed by unconditional love. Personally, feeling unconditionally loved in a way that I had never experienced before as Nora. A way that I don't think we can experience human to human on a consistent basis,
Right.
right? We can run unconditional love for another in the moment, but running consistent unconditional love for another human is very challenging with our third dimensional operating systems. And that's the benefit of that connection with the guides. I find the love aspect of it to be the most important piece, to experience being loved, and then the dissemination of that love to those I'm working with, and then those all of humanity, because it just continues to radiate out.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. Do you ever get nervous?
I get anxious before I channel every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a lot of anxiety, but before every session, before every event. Now, I see that more as just classic performance anxiety, like stage fright, right? Mild stage fright. Then I'm never anxious that I'm not going to give the information that's needed to be given, right? It's never like that. I think it's more just a typical human response to, oh, the spotlight is upon me and it is on me to deliver. Yes.
Wanting to do a good job, wanting to give value to people.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask you about channeling your cat.
Oh, okay, good.
I was mentioning to Nora before we started the podcast that I had just lost my beloved Holly, who was 16 years
Mm,
and 4 months old. So, and she was an appendage of mine. So I'm having a little bit of trouble getting used to not having her energy on me. And later on the day that she passed, I thought that I heard her voice and I thought, I must be going crazy.
mhm.
And I remembered that you had had an experience of your beloved cat coming through. And I thought, well, how awesome is it that I'm connecting with Nora? I can ask her about this. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Ursula, who some of you, if you're familiar with my work, is a fairy that I channel, showed up for us originally as a cat. And she was about 2.5 years old when we adopted her. And her formal name was Ursula, but we found that that was the name she was given. And we didn't want to really change her name initially, but it also felt a little formal for her. So we changed it to Lala and Ursa. And then one day John looked at her and said, John, my partner of 25 years, looked at her and said, she she looks like a Smurf. And that just stuck. So we renamed her the Smurf, but it was always the, like it was a little formal, right? Like it was a title. She was the Smurf. And she was with us until she was 13 years old. It was the fall of 2019. So it was right as we were heading into, the massive death experience of the pandemic. And we could tell she was suffering and took her in. She had a cancerous tumor in her mouth. And so we brought her home. They were like, you should let her go right away. And I said, we're gonna ask instead for some morphine and bring her home with us for a couple of days to spend that time with her. And the very first night, that first night, and I guess I should say that she hung out under a chair in the dining room, which is right below where the fairy Kalyandra had come through into my home back in 2010 in full 10-foot tall fairy form. So I knew that to be a fairy portal, and we always knew the Smurf was a fairy, right? We knew that about her, that she was a cat bringing through that fairy energy. So she chose to spend the last 2 days of her life in the fairy portal. She did not move from that place for 2 days. And that first night, I needed confirmation that helping her to move on was the right thing to do. So I asked before I went to sleep for some guidance. And while sleeping, I dreamt that when I got up in the morning, she had died.
Mm.
So when I got up that morning and she was still alive, it was very clear to me that yes, we were making the right choice for her. So we took her in and we helped her go. And then we came home and John and I took a nap together. And as we were lying there, our entire home was filled with the sound of her purr.
Oh,
We both heard it. This was not like a in your, head sound. It was radiating throughout the house, louder than we'd ever heard her purr before. She had a very quiet, soft purr. which was just so hugely magical for us to have that experience. And then as I was drifting off, I heard her say to me, you're going to start channeling me now. I'm going to come through as Ursula the fairy, and you're going to share my work and viewpoint and energy and joy with everyone. And I said, yeah, I'm not." Like, right, it's enough that I channel the Pleiadians and the other fairies that I work with. I'm not going to be the crazy cat lady who channels your dead cat. No, F off. I'm not doing it. And just like 4 days later, I had a group event scheduled, which I continued with. And damn it, if she just did not come through during that event. And she's been very present in my work since. And the beautiful thing about it is, although I grieved her physical passing, and still at times I miss that little furry physical form, I don't miss the being. I don't miss her. She's always with me. So for you and Holly, right, there's the same. And I wonder if Holly wants to come through you in fairy form as well, because Holly clearly is also, to me at least, from that fairy realm. She
Um,
seemed to hold that energy when I would perceive her images and energy.
ah, that's so funny. I'm being reminded she had a little fairy costume when she was little. Well, little, I mean, she was 4 pounds, so when she was really little. And I'm getting this vision of her with her little wings, and I think you might be very right. So thank you for that. I'll definitely
Yes.
explore. I'm wondering, what do you tell non-spiritual people when they ask what you do for a living?
Oh, I tell everybody what I do, right?
Okay,
Without hesitation.
awesome.
And use the same language that I use when I'm talking with somebody who would also define themselves as on a spiritual path. It is rare any longer that when I tell people I'm a channel, that they don't know what that means. Now, 25 years ago, when I started, I would often have to explain what channeling is.
Right.
But today, our consciousness collectively have shifted to the point where it's just in our everyday vernacular. I mean, I hear it in TV shows all the time, right? Oh, so and so was just channeling so and so, right? Yeah, it's very common. So, yes, I'm not shy at all. I'm very out of the closet with everything I am and do and believe and think and say. And I have a big mouth. I come from the bossy big mouth planet. Often that serves me, sometimes it gets me a little trouble, but usually that trouble even ends up serving me.
If you weren't doing what you do now, what do you think you would be doing?
Well, I started as an actress.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, my degree is in theater, and I acted in Chicago for years. I had my own theater company. I also directed, so I kind of flip-flop back and forth from acting to directing, but it was always, small, non-equity, non-paying theater. Although I did children's theater for years, I toured the Chicago public school system and did substance abuse prevention, child sexual abuse prevention, and conflict resolution programming all throughout Illinois. So I was in every neighborhood you can imagine in Chicago. I went to Columbia College in downtown Chicago. So I was a white girl from the suburbs, raised in I would say a slash conservative slash neoliberal kind of ideology home, right? Raised by some pretty hardcore racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic beliefs and thoughts and freely expressed around me, right? And then this white girl from the suburbs landed herself in the midst of the incredibly diverse population that attended Columbia College, where I was surrounded by Black and brown and gay and trans, you name it, students. And I immediately shifted my worldview in that moment, right? It took no effort at all for me to and I wasn't in agreement with the racism I grew up with, the anti-Semitism. I was not at all in agreement with any of it. I didn't like it. But that shit creeps in to your own consciousness when you live in it. So it did take me some years to even undo some of my own conditioning and programming. I would say that work was not fully complete until I started professionally channeling. But even for the next decade, I had thought forms float through where I would be shocked that I would still, even for a second, think something like that, right?
Mhm.
Where did this question start? Oh, what would I be doing? So yeah, so I started that as an actress. What would I be doing if I weren't doing this? Acting, writing, teaching. Yes, performing. Which this is completely a performance, you know it, right? When you're channeling, there is a performative element to it. And having that training in theater absolutely supports my ability to use my voice and reach others.
Yeah. Do you feel energy? So for things like solar flares and geomagnetic storms and that kind of thing, do you feel those in your body? And if you do, what do you do to move through them easier?
So the way I experience those things is usually tiredness or kind of like hyper energy. Um, and then I just check in to see what I need. Do I need a nap? Do I need grounding? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to drink more water? Right? I'm just kind of I'm constantly. I find one of the most powerful spells that I run and that I share is to ask myself as often as I can, how am I feeling right in this moment? To answer honestly, which is hard for us all because we're all supposed to be doing great. Right? And well, that's just not really the human experience that we're all great all the time. We're very complex beings. First, and to even do this, to even answer, how am I used to have to interview myself because it was so hard for me to discern how I was actually feeling in the moment. So I would be like, how am I? And then like blank, right? So I would say, okay, am I angry? Am I sad? Am I frustrated? Am I happy? Am I, until I would hit on, okay, that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling frustrated. The next question then is, what do I need? And I let whatever the answer is drop in. So sometimes what do I need might be like, oh, a chocolate chip cookie, right? And then there's a clearer voice that says, a nice green salad, right? And I've learned to discern between the self-soothing need, right? And the healthy need. And I usually choose both at that point, right? It'll be the salad and then the cookie.
Sounds like a fair compromise.
Yes. So yes, that's typically how I run. However, I'm not hugely affected by those kinds of things in the ways that I know some people are,
Mhm.
right? Some of us are more sensitive to some things and less sensitive to other things. And I have found that the solar activity and electromagnetic energy and all of that is just something that doesn't, those things don't knock me out. I feel them, I have an awareness of them, but yes, not like some people do.
Right. I want to ask you, I know that hashtag operate from joy is really your thing. How did that come to be?
Boy, that's a good question. I think it started in 2015 or 16, somewhere in there. So around the time, that's funny that we last saw each other
Yeah.
in human, person to person, at cafe, at channel share, and then cafe gratitude afterwards, right, which is so fun. um I was doing work back then on deepening the integration of the higher self slash fifth dimensional consciousness into the density of the energy centers in our bodies. And I had laid out a pathway where the Pleiadians had given me very specific words for each energy center, defining the vibration or frequency. So I also use those terms interchangeably. The vibration or frequency that is most effective to access in that energy center via connection with the higher self in the body, because we've moved out of this old operating system where we used to go up and out to access our higher selves, and have moved into re-identifying as both who we are in our ego personalities right now and our higher selves. And that work is happening internally. The word joy is the vibration that I got for the sacral energy center. So notice I'm not using the word chakra.
Mhm.
This is part of my political work in decolonizing. The chakra system is specific to India. It's not my culture, right? So just this week, I got clearly, okay, stop using that word and start using energy center instead.
Ah.
So sacral is what I would have said was the second chakra, right? So sacral energy center, the word joy was given. And I started to then understand that we were shifting that energy center out of a third dimensional interpretation of, okay, this is our sexual energy and this is our creative energy, into a more expanded understanding that this is our creator energy. This is where our fuel for our creationary experience is sourced, is our sacral center via the activation of the vibration of joy.
Mm.
So operate from joy then just came in at some point, like, okay, the more I activate that vibration of joy in that energy center and use that as the fuel for my experience, that shifts me into operating from joy on a more regular basis. Now, what operate from joy does not mean is keep yourself in some imaginary high vibe place at all times and don't feel your shit, right? Feeling your shit is a huge part of operating from joy,
Ah.
because we cannot be genuinely joyful. If we have sadness, we are not tending to. If we have grief, we're not tending to. If we have anger, we're not tending to. If we have unhealed trauma. So it really goes hand in hand, this idea of furthering the healing of untransmuted trauma to allow for the integration of the higher self into the density of our lower energy centers, solar plexus on down to the soles of our feet, that then facilitates our ability to operate from joy.
Wow, what I had no idea. I'm so glad I asked that.
Yeah, thank you.
Wait, we're gonna change completely.
Change it.
It's almost to the opposite of that. What frustrates you about being human?
I think the most frustrating thing about being human for me is that we have to make money to provide for our basic needs.
Mm.
And I feel my frustration about that is exacerbated right now as we're watching the wealth gap widen here on this planet, as more and more people are falling into and below the poverty line. So I'm in the process of losing my home of 15 years.
Mhm.
We have been renting this house here in the Ojai Valley in California, and our landlord has let us know that he needs this house back for his own family, for his reasons. And there is nothing affordable in the Ojai Valley, not a single thing. And I'm not This is not hyperbole. This is just an actuality of this reality. So we are most likely moving to Chicago because we have an option there that's fantastic. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's magical, right? I can feel the magic and the perfection in the unfolding of all of it. And yet, as a human, I'm frustrated that I even have to confront this issue, right? And then in the United States, as compared to many other countries, we have the issues of having to pay for our own health care, having to, no child care for working people, right? No care. There's just no collective care in this country. The housing issue is worldwide, so that's an aside. But as a human, these things are absolutely not just frustrating to me, they are enraging to me, to be honest. Feel enraged at times.
Yeah, I get it. Our house insurance went up to $7,000 a year
Yeah,
because of the last hurricane we went through.
yeah,
And so there's so many seniors that are literally having to leave their homes because they can't afford the insurance
yeah,
because it's twice the amount of their mortgage.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, something really needs to shift.
Well, Pluto in Aquarius, potentially, I haven't even talked about astrology when you asked what I do. I
Oh,
am
yes.
not an astrologer, right? I'm not a trained astrologer. I don't do personal charts. However, over the years, my interest in astrology has grown.
Mhm.
And when I channel, I will often incorporate big astrological aspects and alignments and experiences that we are having as a way for everyone to better understand what's affecting the collective reality and then how our individual experience of that might be playing out as well. So that's another aspect of who I am and what I do. And we have a huge astrological logical change that we're going through with Pluto having moved into Aquarius. I'm sure you're familiar with this, right? So, Pluto was in Capricorn for almost 20 years, and Capricorn is very focused on material reality, the self, Earth itself, but also really supports an excess in wealth. Let's just
Hmm.
right. And Pluto is the transformer, so Pluto's like, okay, we're gonna move through. I'm gonna call Pluto a we. Let's say Pluto's non-binary. Like I can't genderize our planets as he or she, right? I like to use we or they. I see them as collective beings. So as Pluto moves through Capricorn, Pluto landed in Capricorn in January of 2008, which was the beginning of the financial collapse. And if you notice, I'm bringing this up because we're talking about insurance. One of the first entities the government bailed out was AIG, massive insurance company, right? Too big to fail. What we're seeing now in this rising of insurance rates as a response in part to climate change, but really as a response to greed and the corporate bottom line is the end of Pluto moving through Capricorn into now Aquarius. Now Aquarius wants what's best for everyone.
Oh, I love that.
Aquarius is humanitarian and looking always at the bigger picture and what will benefit the most of us. So Pluto now is going to spend the next 18 till 2043 moving through Aquarius, helping us transform what needs to be transformed so we can collectively be in a healthier place.
Mm.
There's one little glitch. Pluto's going to jump back into Capricorn in September, this coming September, and won't move into Aquarius again until 2 weeks after the election in November.
Ah.
Right? Now, it could be a good thing from the perspective that Pluto is the transformer and the cleaner upper, and there are a lot of plutocrats that came to power during this last transit of Pluto in Capricorn, who may find that power leaving their hands during that window, right? So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, but boy, it's going to be interesting.
I love the way you explain that because I just, as many times as people can tell me about astrology, it doesn't stick in my brain.
Mm.
And Spirit just said, you're not meant to do it this time around. So, all right. But it just, I can't retain it. I've tried so many times to learn it and it just doesn't stick. So I have to accept that. But I love when people explain it in a way that's so easy to understand. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you consider your superpower?
My superpower. Ugh. It's funny. I knew there was going to be a question that would totally throw me, and this is the question that always kinds of always throws me in these kinds of interviews. Um, like I everything I'm thinking to answer sounds corny and stupid in my head. I think my superpower is my ability to be real, right? To just show up in the moment and offer what is needed at hand. I also have a very strong listening ability. I was at a city council meeting last night, and there was a particular issue at hand that I had spoken about previously multiple times. Everything had been said pretty much that needed to be said, so I didn't sign up to speak. And there were probably 50 people who got up and spoke on this issue. It was a ceasefire resolution for what's happening in Gaza. And as I sat there, I asked, okay, what hasn't been said yet? And I'm listening to everyone, and then suddenly it dropped in. The one thing I hadn't yet heard, and I heard it, and then signed up to speak about it. And it's just about the current rise of fascism and how I see what's happening there as an example of this, and calling for a ceasefire as a way to halt that rise of fascism, because you have two fascist governments there. Netanyahu is far right, borderline fascist, Hamas fascist, right? So it's that listening, I think is, but I like to talk a lot. So sometimes my talking too much disables my superpower.
What would you like to be remembered for?
I would like to be remembered for bringing joy, laughter, healing, love to the world.
What trait do you most admire in others?
Patience,
Mm.
um, responsibility to the more physical aspects of this reality, right? I'm not good at that. I'm always so jealous of people who like have their shit handled in a physical way when it comes to money and house and right. I mean, I think the thing I value more than anything else is freedom.
Mm.
So personally, for me personally, so that makes it challenging then for me to make commitments to things that may take up not even a significant amount of my time, just some time. Like
Mhm.
I have that push and pull in me every time I get asked to do something. Like, what is that going to mean? I'm not going to be able to do that if I say yes to this, right? So, yes, that I appreciate that in others who can just say yes to things, recognizing that, right? That's not taking away from their freedom, that is perhaps allowing them to be more free.
Well, maybe you're more like that than you think because you answered me almost immediately with a
Well,
yes.
with you, I got an immediate yes. It was just like, yes. So usually when I get approached for an interview, it takes me a while to get back.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Well, I feel very honored then. Um, what have you been feeling about 2024? So I know that you've kind of talked about the astrological elements, but has Spirit been sharing anything with you about, core themes or anything about 2024?
I mean, I haven't, it's funny because I really have tried to maneuver myself out of making any predictions when I channel.
Mhm.
Largely because we're moving so quickly now through so many timelines, right? So rapidly, we're changing things at such a rapid rate.
Yeah.
My personal sense of 2024 is that it's gonna, after the last few years we've had, which I think were just really fucking horrible. Excuse my language. They were hard. They were really hard for so many reasons, right? I mean, I lost, mm, I stopped keeping count after 7 beings, right? Some to COVID, some to other things. But there was so many other losses. And then communities torn apart and right. So this year to me, at least for right now, is kind of feeling like there's a little bit of a break from the intensity happening. That's what I tune into right now. Of course, that's me as a white person sitting in my white privilege here in the United States. If I were living in Gaza or Israel, I would not be saying this. If I were living in Ukraine or Russia, I would not be saying this. If I were living in Sudan, I would not be saying this, right? So I have to put that out there
Mhm.
because this is really something that's come to my attention over the last few years is how so much of our new age community is running off of an underlying white privilege that we're not addressing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when we say things like, I create my reality,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not that simple. This is not simple math here. I have come to an understanding that in every moment I am affecting the moment I'm experiencing, but I can't claim 100% creation of it. And I never will moving forward again because it's much bigger than that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think there's healing for this year. I think there are opportunities, but there are also going to continue to be, I mean, major shifting moments and transformations and potentially world events. And I think it's going to be that way for a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that we're at the end of this major transition. I'm seeing we're in the middle of it.
Mhm. Mhm. What has been the most pleasant surprise of your journey?
That it's happened. All of it. Seriously, right? It's like walking into Cafe Gratitude that night with you at Channel Panel. What we had like 12 of us, 15 of us, right? We had no reservation. And I was like, can we have a table? And oh yeah, magically, oh yes, here you are. There's a table for 15 available, right? In a restaurant that doesn't seat too many. It's that I'm constantly being surprised by everything. I
Yeah.
mean, when I think back to the moment, so I was waitressing as my kind of primary financial support while hooking up with my channeling abilities. And the restaurant I had worked at for almost 10 years, they announced they were closing. So there were a whole group of us who had been there together from the day the restaurant opened until that moment. And I had a sense that was coming, right? So I wasn't surprised. A lot of us did, I think. And I heard very clearly Morando say, okay, it's time for you to go do this work now. And I was like, no, right? Just like Ursula, like, yeah, you're gonna channel your dead cat now. No, fuck off. I'm not, right? And and Miranda's like, all right, fine. Then you can continue to serve food and alcohol to people and make money doing that. And I was like, oh, damn it. Right? Like in that moment, I kind of, because I think I just had some judgment about I shouldn't receive money for it. And maybe I wasn't ready yet to do it. Right. So I went to my favorite metaphysical bookstore in Chicago, Healing Earth Resources, which no longer exists, and asked the owner there if I could become one of their card readers. And I'd gotten to know her a bit as a customer. And she said, we don't really have any spots available for readers right now. And I said, I noticed you don't have anyone in the evening. Could I come in on Tuesday and Thursday nights when your daytime readers are done and take those days? And she was like, all right, I don't think it's going to work because we haven't had nighttime readers. Well, it did. It worked. And, in every moment, every other store I walked into, there was just this constant unfolding of here's exactly what you need in the moment to be able to do what it is you desire to do. So it's all surprised me. It's all been surprising and astonishing, and I believe will continue to surprise me. I'm surprised that we're moving to Chicago. This is a huge surprise. That was the question, right? What do you find most surprising? Was that it? Maybe it
What
was
has
a
been the
different
most
word.
pleasant surprise of your journey? But I think this is so important to share. And I love that you said that, because I think some people think just because you channel, you're this all-knowing being and you know everything that's going to happen. And it is not so.
Let's be clear. I am an absolute know-it-all, right? But that does not mean that I know anything or everything about my own life.
Yeah, if
No,
there's
it's
anything,
true. It's
if,
true. And it's with this, it's funny that we're talking about surprise because in the winter solstice transmission, I love that you put this question in. Ursula asked us to begin to identify surprise as another element, like we would identify earth, air, fire, and water.
oh,
She added surprise in and created a whole spell around using surprise, right? So I love that you're asking this. So, yes, being invited to return to the apartment building we moved out of 20 years ago in Chicago is a major surprise. Even though I had a voice in my head for a week saying, call Teresa, she owns the building, and see if they have an apartment available, which I thought was an anxious response to being asked to leave our home, right? I thought that was my anxiety. And then when I spoke with Teresa, because I had to for another reason, she said, come. I said, you don't have an apartment open, do you? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, in a few weeks we will, right? And it's a 3 flat, and they live in one of the apartments. So these this kind of magic, right? I see this as true magic,
yeah.
where you hold a need within yourself. I'll speak about myself. I hold a need within myself. And then I have to put myself in an open position for that need to be fulfilled without an attachment to what that fulfillment should look like. Offers me the most fabulous surprises and outcomes. And do I make bad choices? Absolutely. Do I get it wrong? 100%. Sometimes I do. But then I adjust and ask again.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite reference book?
I mean, I used to, yes, I'm not gonna say the one I used to say. Um, okay, To Kill a Mockingbird came into my head when you asked that question. Isn't that fascinating? It's one of the first books I bought for myself as when I think it was in 3rd or 4th grade when I bought it at a used book sale. I picked it up and I just thought I'm supposed to read this book. Um, I mean, the values in To Kill a Mockingbird are my values spiritually and as a human. So yes, it is a reference book, but it's not the one I normally would have said. I love Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. And yet I hesitate to share that because I have diverged from her personal belief system. So
Hmm.
that's been a challenge for me to continue to recommend it as she, supported Trump and right. And those things are important to me when
Yeah.
I make recommendations,
Yeah.
that I'm recommending that alignment of values.
Yes. If you knew everything you've gone through in your life so far beforehand, would you still choose it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. What do you do for fun?
Hang out with the dogs. Right now, writing is, although I see it as work product, it's also a lot of fun. I love TV, meaning I love to watch. I don't have, regular TV, but I have tons of streaming platforms, and it is fun for me to, especially as a former actress, dive into, right, the imaginary worlds that are created and projected for us. That's like my end of the day stress reliever, usually. Um, Cook. I love to cook, right? My paternal grandmother was a professional cook in the 40s. She became the executive chef and the executive cafeteria of a huge company as a woman with a sixth grade education who
Wow.
had no formal training really and just grew up with a dad who was a baker, and so I love to cook. I cook for fun. I doesn't mean I don't get stressed out when I cook, right? Like you can choose to get stressed out about anything and everything. And I love for fun hanging out with people that I love.
Yeah.
Like that level of connection is so fun. Yes.
Yeah. Or you can just be yourself
Yeah.
and be accepted in that. Do you have a favorite affirmation?
I'll give the one that I use around money, because that's typically my biggest stumbling block, is my personal prosperity. I am grateful for having more than enough in this moment. Okay, that is something. It used to be for me, I'm grateful for having what I need.
Mm,
It has gone to, I'm grateful for having more than enough. And that is a true statement for me in this moment. And as long as I stay in the moment, I'm good. If I think about, 15 years from now and what that might look like, then I start to feel anxiety.
yeah.
Yes, that's it.
We wobble.
Yes.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, dishonesty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In
Especially like I like talking to a psychic. Like it's such a waste of time. You know what I mean? When people, I'm sure you have this experience as well, right? Where somebody starts and you can just feel that it's not true. And all it is taking up time, right? Like,
and energy.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah. If you had, this is going to be your last question. If you had the opportunity to address a group of first graders, what
Mm.
would your message be to them?
My message to a group of first graders would be to love themselves unconditionally, exactly as they are in each and every single moment. To remind them that the way to remember that is that they are love incarnate. That is the truth of their identity.
I often wonder how our paths would have gone if we had received that message,
Yeah,
and what an opening that would be for the youth of today,
yeah,
the young
yeah.
today. So if anyone would like to find out more about you or experience more of your work, where would they do that?
So they can do that on my website, which is www.noraherold.com. I assume you'll have my name somewhere, right? So I don't need to spell it
Absolutely.
out.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I'm also on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter and Substack. And
Yes.
my Substack is also, it's Nora Herold, but there's a link to my Substack on my website. I'm doing a lot of at least 2 articles a week right now, sometimes more. Last week I did one for the first time ever because we had a huge yard sale this past weekend, and that took precedence over my writing and publishing.
I had yard sale envy. I thought, why don't they have yard sales like that around here? I
They
would have
don't?
loved everything. Well, what you would align with,
Oh.
I would align with. So it's like, how do I find me a yard sale like that here?
Yes, yes. A yard sale with a lot of crystals is pretty common in Ohio. It is.
Oh, I would imagine. Not so much here in Florida. Well, thank you so much. It's always a joy to connect with you. I hope we don't go so long without connecting face to face and having a chat. I wish you everything wonderful. You're always a delight. And thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Aw, thank you so much, Shelley. I love you so much and so appreciate you and your beauty and joy and warmth and compassion and thoughtfulness and just you as the person that you are.
Oh, thank you. It goes right back to you. And thank you to those who listened to us today. It's a joy to connect with you as well. I'm wishing you all things wonderful until the next time. Bye bye.